Ecommerce Braintrust Podcast, Season 1, Episode 2, the vendor-seller hybrid model of selling on Amazon.
I think you lose even more control because you don't have a rep that you're working with. There's no one to address concerns with around purchase orders. It's completely automated.
This is the Ecommerce Braintrust, a podcast about building momentum online for established consumer brands. Join our hosts and their expert guests for high-level conversations about e-commerce strategies, trends, and innovations. Access our Braintrust and boost your brand's e-commerce potential.
Hello and welcome to the Ecommerce Braintrust podcast. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, and I'm joined by your co-host, Julie Spear.
Hi, everyone.
So today we're going to be talking about two different selling platforms on Amazon, Vendor and Seller Central, and how they can be combined into a hybrid model, which means you can get the best out of both worlds and minimize the downsides. So just by way of a quick introduction to the different models of selling on Amazon, this seller program and the vendor program, I'll just share a little bit of background about what each of those programs are. And then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of each and how using both models together can be beneficial in certain scenarios. So essentially two ways to sell on Amazon. You can sell as a vendor, which is also commonly known as first party or 1P. And so this is essentially a wholesale relationship with Amazon. You're selling on a platform called Vendor Central or perhaps Vendor Express, and you're selling inventory to Amazon at a wholesale price. So usually at a 50% discount or somewhere thereabouts, that price is negotiated by Amazon with each brand for each product. And Amazon will place purchase orders with your brand and pay you within a certain time frame, 60 or 90 days, or again, whatever is agreed in your purchase order. And most of the other costs pertaining to selling on Amazon, so most of the fees that would otherwise be paid if you're selling directly to consumers, are covered by Amazon. They will handle all of the customer service. Generally, they're going to be handling all of the inventory storage and fulfillment. So this is a very familiar kind of model to brands who are currently wholesaling to brick and mortar retail stores or selling wholesale to distributors. By comparison, Amazon also has a marketplace. This type of selling arrangement is conducted on a platform called Seller Central, and it's also known as third party or 3P. So there's a lot of alternative names here. We may switch between them. So I definitely want to make clear what each program means up front. So this is a marketplace model where brands are selling direct to consumers on the Amazon marketplace. So the transaction is completed on Amazon, but it's the brand is actually selling the products directly to the customer through the Amazon platform. They may even choose to have Amazon fulfill their orders through the Fulfillment by Amazon program. And so the fee structure in this case is that Amazon will take a percentage of the sale. In most selling categories, it's 15%. And then if the brand is also using Fulfilled by Amazon and leveraging Amazon's fulfillment infrastructure, then you'll pay generally dollar and weight based fulfillment fee per order that goes out. So those are, at a very high level, the two different ways of selling on Amazon. And so today we're going to talk about actually merging those two models together to try and get the best out of both worlds, because each of them come with their own pros and cons. So what is a hybrid model? When we're talking about a hybrid model, what does that mean? And what are some of the benefits of considering a hybrid model?
The hybrid model is when a brand would opt to have a portion of their catalog sold through vendor, either on Vendor Express or Vendor Central. And so they're selling wholesale, as you said, to Amazon. And then also a portion of their catalog selling through Seller Central, so selling direct to the customers. In some cases, brands will have the same product on both platforms. And in other cases, they might have a select portion of their catalog only available, only being sold through Seller Central, and a select portion of their catalog only being sold through vendor on one of the vendor platforms. And the benefits are you can opt to get the best of both worlds. You can minimize the level of customer service by having Amazon manage a portion of it through your products being sold on vendor. You can also get the opportunity to take advantage of some of the marketing tools available only through vendor. So those are things like coupons, control over selecting when to do lightning deals.
The Vine review program.
Yeah, the Vine review program isn't available on Seller Central. So if you do the hybrid model and you have products on vendor, then you have access to that program, which can help you build reviews for new products that you're launching.
Mm-hmm. And so another major difference between vendor and seller is pricing.
Yeah. And this is where I think brands need to have a clear picture of their margins and where kind of their comfort zone is. Part of the difference is the control of pricing for the customer. On Seller Central, the brand has direct control over the price of their product. The brand sets the price. That's what it's sold at. The brand can elect to run sales when they want to and promote their product. On the vendor platforms, Amazon has control over the pricing. The brand really relinquishes the control of pricing for the customers when selling through vendor. And that can be kind of a sticky point because Amazon might not adhere to MAP pricing, and they want to offer the best deals they can to their customers, so they could be listing the product prices well below what the brand's MAP pricing is for those products.
Yeah, this is a big, big deal for many brands who often have this pricing channel conflict, really. So they have retailers who they have to adhere to MAP pricing, minimum advertised pricing in their stores. And then they already have a problem with their customers actually just going to their stores and then looking something up on Amazon and buying. And then that's further exacerbated by the fact that, hey, Amazon's actually selling it way below what they're allowed to sell it. So then they're going to go back to the brand and ask what's going on, and it can be really harmful to that relationship.
Yeah, I would say that loss of control over the pricing of the products is one of the more significant downsides of the vendor relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, have you heard of any brand that you're aware of actually being able to get Amazon to commit to a MAP price?
No, you can contest when you are seeing Amazon not adhering to MAP. You can build a case and you can contest it. And there's some success, but it's not, Amazon won't turn around and say, oh, okay, we'll adjust the pricing right away. You do have to fight for it. We've seen instances, surprisingly, where Amazon has listed the price on Amazon well above MAP, which leads to the products just not moving. Those cases, when you submit the cases to Amazon and say, hey, you're listing, 60% above MAP and therefore things aren't selling, Amazon's a little bit more willing to respond and adjust pricing in those instances than they are in the reverse direction.
Yeah.
It was kind of a surprising one to see that.
Right. And so some of the other challenges with the vendor program, just while we're sort of digging on the vendor program right now, you mentioned some of the programs that are unavailable on the seller program being Vine reviews, coupons. There's also, from an ad standpoint, currently, although that's changing and I believe it's going to change fairly quickly in the future, you can get access to different types of advertising placements on the vendor program that you can't on the seller program.
Yeah, but as we've seen in the past few weeks with Amazon offering headline search ads now on Seller Central, which was previously only available on AMS if you're a vendor, Amazon is kind of, like you said, I think it's going to change even more in the future, and probably soon enough, product display ads will be available over on Seller Central as well. So then the AMS access was a major carrot for brands looking to kind of go the hybrid model. That was one of the major reasons that a brand would look to go that model. And now with Amazon opening up the advertising abilities on Seller Central, you wonder how much of a carrot vendor will hold for brands.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's something else I kind of had on my list here to talk about is which model does Amazon prefer? Because they have the marketplace and then they have the vendor products. And from Amazon's standpoint, when you look at their financials, they hold all of the first-party vendor inventory on their balance sheet. So they have to actually purchase that inventory. They have to hold it. They have to collect and pay sales tax on it. It's capital intensive to run this vendor model. So the fact that they can have a marketplace and a wholesale model is really smart, because it means that if you can have virtually unlimited SKUs on the marketplace side, because they don't need to hold any inventory. It's actually just, they're just collecting fees on this inventory as it flows through their system, essentially. It means that they can have virtually unlimited selection rather than having to purchase inventory themselves. So they don't break this down from a profitability standpoint, but the hypothesis is that from a financial perspective, third party is probably more profitable to Amazon because they don't have to hold that inventory on their balance sheet. Sometimes the seller is fulfilling the inventory directly themselves, so Amazon doesn't even have to deal with any logistics for those products at all. And it means that, again, they can have virtually unlimited selection. And from a percentage standpoint, the number of SKUs on the marketplace side has definitely more than doubled versus the vendor SKUs. So in the show notes, I'll link to some analysis of what we think that looks like. But we can kind of see that there is a long tail with the SKUs that Amazon actually purchases first party. So right now, they're kind of more willing to stock those products that are in the top 1,000 products ranked in each category than the more long tail products that might sell more slowly. And so that means if you are a brand, you really want to get onto the vendor program, this is another sort of con, I guess, that it's invite only. Amazon has to identify your product as a top selling item or see it out in the world and say, we definitely need to carry this ourselves. It's a very critical strategic product for us to carry. We need to ensure that we have control over this ourselves. Therefore, we want this brand on the vendor program. So you can't actually generally you can't approach Amazon and request to be on the vendor central platform.
Right. And so kind of the intermediary platform then between Seller Central and Vendor Central would be Vendor Express.
Ooh, what are your personal thoughts and feelings about Vendor Express, Julie?
I think you lose even more control because you don't have a rep that you're working with. There's no one to address concerns with around purchase orders. It's completely automated. And so if you're a brand looking for a quick start on Amazon, Vendor Express isn't so express. It can take some time to get those purchase orders rolling. And so you only get the purchase orders on a weekly basis. And so you run the risk of stockouts going the Vendor Express route. And we've seen that that's been an instance actually where the hybrid model is attractive because then brands can cover those stockout times in theory by also offering the products through Seller Central. That can also be tricky to navigate.
Right. So with Vendor Express, you don't have access to a buyer or a rep, which you do with Vendor Central. And the pricing of those products is completely machine driven.
Yes. Everything about Vendor Express is machine driven, completely automated. There's even less control than there is in Vendor Central. At least in Vendor Central, there's a chance that you're going to get a person on the other end of things there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is something that we have a lot of approach us at Bobsled Marketing about because they have themselves been approached by the vendor team at Amazon about getting onto the Vendor Central platform. And so they're kind of wondering, is this worth it? What are the benefits? And something that's worth pointing out is that there isn't, within Amazon's organizational structure, the vendor and seller teams are actually quite siloed and seemingly have quite different targets. There isn't a whole lot of cooperation between this brand is already on the marketplace, let's leave them alone, or being strategic across those teams who are trying to grow both of their portfolios, at sometimes seemingly in competition with each other. So brands often approach us asking, should I go ahead with Vendor Central, or should I stay on the marketplace, or consider both? And one of the sort of tips that I have for brands in this situation is to really get educated on how the vendor program works and what kind of terms you're going to be looking at when you're being wooed, as it would be from a Vendor Central rep. Then this is the time where you can actually negotiate things like purchase order terms. A lot of the time they'll have some carrots around promotional programs that they will talk about. So really dig into exactly what that will mean. It's not really enough for a rep to say, we'll help to promote your brand on Amazon. What exactly does that mean? Does that mean a certain number of Vine review credits? Does that mean some other kind of promotional tool that they're going to be giving you? Because
like free A+ pages and
free A+ pages. Yeah, exactly. Because those all cost money. So it's not really enough to say you'll have access to all of these tools, because once you're on Amazon, there's usually always a ticket price associated with them, and you have to set them up yourself. And it doesn't end there. It's not like you get onto Amazon Vendor Express and they take care of all of the marketing for you. That is far from the truth.
Yeah. While Seller Central is very, very much do-it-yourself, Vendor Central is not that far from it either. I was going to say a lot of the marketing tools that were once available just on Vendor Central are making more and more their way over to Seller Central. We already talked about the advertising with the headline search ads now being available in Seller Central. It's the same with enhanced content for brand owners selling on Seller Central. So now brands have, I think it's 5 different templates of enhanced brand content pages that they can access for free on Seller Central to further optimize their product pages. And I believe recently they even included a template that allows for video.
That's right. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's in a beta phase right now, being tested out.
Yeah. And even brands selling on Seller Central, now Amazon's rolled out the storefront where you can also include videos and really tell the story of your brand to customers on Amazon. So beyond just the advertising, more and more of those things are becoming available on Seller Central. So it's kind of evening the scales a little bit there.
So let's talk about the hybrid model and in what situations this is going to be helpful for brands. What kind of scenario would you actually recommend someone look at a hybrid model as opposed to one or the other platform?
I think when you're a brand that has a pretty large catalog of products that run the gamut in terms of pricing, I find that selling products for under the $15 threshold through Seller Central, you limit your profitability just because of the FBA fees alone. And so if you have the lower priced items, it would be wise to consider the wholesale model for those items and sell them through Vendor Central. And take a look at the products in your catalog above that $15 threshold and maybe list those through Seller Central. So I think if you have a broad catalog that has price points that run the gamut, the hybrid model could be an option.
And what about cases where a brand has lots of other sellers on their products? Let's say they're selling through distributors and they have distributors and retailers actually selling those same SKUs on Amazon. So they might be competing for the buy box. Is that a situation where you would think it's better to be on Vendor Central because generally Amazon favors having their own inventory as the buy box eligible seller? Or is that not really a factor?
I mean, you still deal with the other sellers on the page, but Amazon definitely does favor Amazon when it comes to the percentage of time in the buy box. So that is a factor well worth considering. A point in that too would be tightening up your distribution list and making clear your terms with your distributors of where they can and can't sell your product. And some opt to tell their distributors they can't sell their products on Amazon.
Right, exactly. And so what are some of the tricky aspects of implementing a hybrid model? Because we've done this a couple of times with our clients at Bobsled Marketing. There's been success stories and then there's issues when we first get started generally, right?
There's definitely hangover issues. It's kind of how it's described. So if you start in vendor and then you move to seller, there are hangover issues. And so we've had instances where brands have been selling on a vendor platform, purchase orders aren't coming in at the rate that meets demand, the purchase orders are slow and they've stocked out and their product isn't available to customers consistently. So they've opted to also sell through Seller Central, the same ASINs that they're selling on Vendor. And that is really tricky. When you're selling exactly the same ASIN on both platforms, you are competing against yourself. There are hangover issues where you will be buy box ineligible for a good stretch of time. One of the keys to really getting buy box eligibility is sending that product into FBA. If you are going to do the hybrid model and fulfill by merchant on Seller Central, more often than not, you will not get buy box eligibility at the outset of opening your account. You need to get product into FBA in order to get buy box eligibility to help deal with those hangover issues.
So even if Amazon doesn't have any inventory at that stage?
Yes. Yeah, we've seen a case, it's strange. We've seen a case where the quantity in Vendor is at 0. Amazon has no inventory. The FBM quantity in Seller Central was there. It was like around 100, still not buy box eligible. That product still was not in the buy box. And it wasn't until the seller committed to sending in FBA inventory and FBA became available, did they become buy box eligible. So that really is key. If you're going to do the hybrid model and you're moving from Vendor with the same ASIN in Seller Central, I would say you have to commit to sending in FBA. I prefer to kind of avoid competing against yourself as much as possible and don't list the same ASINs on both platforms.
Yeah, and there is a question mark around what kind of rules Amazon has around this as well. You would definitely want to be looking at the actual terms of your vendor agreement with Amazon to see if they have stipulated any terms around what portion of your product catalog is available on the vendor program, whether you're allowed to sell products on the seller platform. Generally speaking, there isn't hard and fast rules around what you're allowed to sell on each platform, but you would want to be referring back to your specific agreement to make sure that you're not running afoul of anything that you've agreed to in writing with Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, if you're going to go the hybrid model and you're sure that you're safe in the terms of your agreement with Amazon, you could look at bundling products that you're selling as individual SKUs on Vendor. You could bundle them together and create a whole new ASIN and sell that on Seller Central. And I think that's a good way to go. You could look at what is sold as a single unit through Vendor or put it together in a multi-pack on Seller Central. So then that also creates a new ASIN. So taking a look at your catalog and seeing how you can reconfigure it as an offer so that you could create a new ASIN is a way to avoid competing against yourself on both platforms.
That's a great point. And especially we're recording this episode coming up into the fourth quarter. So a couple of things stand out at me. Probably don't try and implement a hybrid model right before Q4, given the issues with buy box eligibility that you mentioned.
Yes.
And then also bundling and multi-packs and gift packs are a huge opportunity for brands just in general around this time of year.
Yeah, it gives customer one stop. They don't need to piece together a gift, put it together for them.
Yeah.
And bundles are a huge way to go.
Yeah. What kind of bundles work effectively in food and gourmet grocery products where you can have a selection of products bundled together, whether in a gift pack or not? What are some other examples?
I would say some pet supplies. You could put a bundle of different pet toys together for a gift for the pet lover in your life. I think the sports and outdoors category, you could look at different exercise gear. If it's yoga mats and a yoga towel, instead of having them separate, bundle them together. It really is looking at what's complementary in your catalog. And if it makes sense together, bundle it.
Yep. Yeah, and that's really effective when you already have your entire catalog on the vendor program and you're kind of looking at alternative. You don't necessarily have any other individual products to add onto the Seller Central marketplace. This is where you can create brand new products with your existing assortment.
Exactly. It's just a matter of packaging, changing the packaging. Yep.
Yeah. And to be clear, if you're going to be using FBA, those products need to be physically bundled together in a single package, labeled with a new Amazon ASIN and sold that way. You can't get Amazon to actually bundle your products together at the warehouse.
Correct. And those bundles also would need their own unique UPC.
Right.
Yes. It wouldn't be the UPC on each individual product and the bundle doesn't count. That bundle itself becomes the new product, so that needs its own UPC.
Right. So to close out the topic that we've been talking about here, the hybrid model of selling on Vendor and Seller Central, when is this a good idea and what are our top tips? I guess from my end, I would say that by selling on two platforms, you do need to consider how that's going to affect your workload in dealing with the Amazon channel. So it's not like you would be able to get onto the vendor program and then your work goes away. As we've talked about before, there's a lot of negotiating with Amazon up front. You also want to be checking all of your reports, and you want to be checking for purchase orders and making sure you fulfill those on times. And then all of the fees that Amazon may assign your account for late shipments, incorrect shipments, that there's still quite a lot of work associated with the vendor platform that might not be as obvious upfront. So by selling on two platforms, even though it's both Amazon, you can essentially be doubling your workload because you're going to need to deal with two different platforms, a buyer, the DIY aspects of Seller Central, the different promotional programs. You can't roll out the same promotion across your entire catalog because they're basically on separate platforms now. So while there can be a lot of benefits to accessing the best of both worlds in this way, you're essentially doubling your workload in most cases, if not more.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also learning two languages. I feel like the language of Seller Central is a little bit different than the language of Vendor Central. So you need to know what it all means on both platforms so you can navigate it successfully and keep both accounts healthy.
Definitely.
I think just being clear on what you want out of the experience of selling on Amazon at the outset is really important. And then, like you said at the beginning of the show, Carrie, is do your homework and really understand both platforms so that you know what you're getting into. If you want to dictate the price of your products, Vendor Central is where that's going to be limited. So just being really clear on the points that matter a lot to you will help you make the decision about which platform is right for you, and also if the hybrid model might be right for you.
Yeah, that's a really great point. That comes before everything else. What are your goals? And working back from there, which platform's right for you?
Absolutely.
So at Bobsled Marketing, we work with both sellers and vendors, and we've helped those brands to set up and navigate a hybrid model. So if you're interested in learning more about how we work with brands at Bobsled Marketing, you can go to our website, bobsledmarketing.com. And we also have the show notes and more content related to the different types of models of selling on Amazon and the hybrid model specifically at bobsledmarketing.com/podcast. Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Carrie.